I call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone who is here this evening and everyone who's watching us at home. We have a little bit more of an agenda than we've had for the last little while. Real briefly, I'll go over our agenda for this evening. First, we have the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from the October 14th meeting. Then we have two public hearings. The first is a vacation on Lake Ridge Village, PUD. The second is a redevelopment modification plan for Copperleaf Village. Then we have three items concerning Hardee's. We have a preliminary plat, final plat, again, both for Copperleaf Village, and a site plan design review for Hardee's. Then we have a preliminary and final plat for Wendy's remodel. And we have two final plats for two sections of Parkway Estates, and a final plat, replat, for the estates at Chapman Farms. That being said, first thing I'd like to do is go to the consent agenda, and I would entertain comments and/or motion. I have a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes have been approved. Before we get into the public hearings real quick, I would like to welcome our new planning technician who's here on our very first meeting this evening, Sarah Wilbur. Welcome. Hope you have fun as much as we're going to have tonight. And I'll briefly go over the procedure for a public hearing. I will open the public hearing and call for exhibits from the city attorney. Then we'll open for staff comments. Then the applicant will make their presentation. I will then ask for witnesses in favor of the petition to speak, witnesses opposed to the petition to speak, and then I'll bring it back up here for discussion on the record. Then I'll close the public hearing, and we'll have further discussion and approve or deny the request. That being said, our very first item this evening is a public hearing on the vacation of Lake Ridge Village PUD, and I open the public hearing. Mr. McDonald.
Mr. Chairman, the city has 8 exhibits. Number 1 is the staff report with attachments. Number 2 is the affidavit of publication in the paper. Number 3 is the application with attachments. Number 4 is the 185-foot notification map. Number 5 is a list of names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. Number 6 is a copy of the letter sent to those property owners. Number 7 is Title 4 Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances. Number 8 is the 2003 Comprehensive Plan. Those are all of the exhibits the city would offer into the record at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Again, before you tonight is the vacation of a previously approved PUD final plan for Lake Ridge Village, Lot 7. This particular piece of property is located on the south side of Duncan Road. It is east of Adams Dairy Parkway, and it was part of the much larger Lake Ridge Village PUD concept plan. Piece of property that's in question tonight is about a 2.1 acre property, and it's zoned general business with the restricted overlay, and the restricted overlay tied the property to a PUD plan, which was the Lake Ridge Village PUD plan. That PUD concept plan was considered in October of 2006, so quite some time ago. The concept plan was approved in January of 2007 by the City Council. The rezoning for the property, rezoning it with the restricted overlay, that occurred at the same time as the PUD concept plan, and it too was approved January of 2007. The Lake Ridge Village Lot 7 PUD final plan, which is the subject of the vacation tonight, was approved by the Planning Commission on November 24th in 2008. Just going into the staff report, excuse me. on page, oops, didn't want to do that, get rid of that. 4 of 4. The vacation review criteria is provided. We can go over it real quickly. The requirements include number 1, which is due and legal notice has been given publication as required herein. You have a copy of that, and it was provided. No private rights are injured, will be injured or endangered by the vacation, and the public will suffer no loss or inconveniences thereby, and that injustice to the applicant and applicants, the application should be granted. So, keep that in mind as you consider this particular vacation. The property owner, the current property owner, which is the bank, has agreed with the vacation, and the applicant then has come forward with this particular application. I think the applicant is here. If you have any questions for them, and I think they'd like to also provide a short presentation. Other than that, I'll stand for any questions if you have any questions for me.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Hawley? Okay, no, go ahead.
How many lots are in the original PUD?
They never really fully preliminary, or they never fully platted the property, so I don't know how many lots. There are a number of lots within that PUD.
So removing this lot from the overall plan will not have an impact on the remaining plan itself?
No, we're not removing any lots. All we're doing is vacating a PUD, the final PUD plan. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Commissioner Trozen, but this isn't changing any lots out there, and the plan area didn't necessarily follow any lots. In other words, when the approval for the PUD final plan came through for this particular area, it didn't really follow a formally platted lot. It followed an area that was to become a formally platted lot at some point in the future.
Thank you.
So this basically gives us a blank slate to go back with the original zoning.
It does. Which brings up another really good point, which is that you should understand that vacating this PUD final plan, it doesn't necessarily erase the previously approved concept plan. Anything that were to happen on this property in the future will still have to come to this body and now the City Council as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation, and you will need to be sworn in?
You're being sworn in. I'll
Okay.
see if I can get you up here.
This one is right just when you have to hearing now questions, should we approve the whole trip and public this over here?
Just do the show. Does that look?
Perfect.
Looks good.
Thank you. Good evening. Sorry.
Need your name and address, please.
My name is Greg Brown. I work for DHM Design. We're a landscape architecture and planning firm. I am based out of Denver, Colorado. And I want to thank Mr. Hawley and his staff for assisting us with this vacation application. And we look forward to the next steps that we will be going through and look forward to being here in front of you. We don't really have anything to add as far as the vacation application goes. We're happy to answer any questions, but we do want to show you a little bit, and it's very conceptual at this point, but kind of our ideas of where we hope to go with this project. So if that would be acceptable, I'll show you a couple of quick images.
We always like to know what's going forward.
Yes, definitely want it to move forward. I do have assistants with me tonight. Nick DiGiuseppe of Stonebrook Development Company is here. Jerry Murphy and Brendan Murphy of the Murphy Law Firm are also here. We do have some engineers on the project that are not able to attend tonight. And as I mentioned, my name is Greg Brown. I think you're all familiar with the site, and Mr. Hawley gave you some information on where that's located. Just coming in on that a little bit closer, as he mentioned, we are east of Adams Dairy Parkway, north of I-70, south of Duncan Road, and east and north of the beautiful Lake Remembrance, which is the amenity that we see as really a key piece of this development project. The vacation process is the first step, and we'd like to, one point I want to make before I switch to the plan, you can see the lighter areas. Let me get my, you can see the lighter areas in here where the hay meadows have been cut for a while. And these are the flatter areas of the site. And when we toured the site, we really felt that it was important to look at the land and what the land was telling us to do. And obviously the farmers, as they were working this land, they knew that that was the area that was easier to farm and, as we feel, easier to develop and will lend itself much better to the development. There's some heavily forested areas through the middle of the project and around the periphery of the project. With that, we've created a again, very conceptual master plan, but really focusing on where those farmed, flatter areas are. Much better for development, staying off of the steep slopes as much as we can, and trying to minimize some of the earthwork that may be required if you were doing a much more extensive plan. Again, Adams Dairy Parkway, Duncan, and the wonderful Lake Remembrance here. We really see this kind of as having a commercial track up at the intersection, perfect location for purely commercial use. And then a series of mixed-use parcels. These are 3 15-acre parcels that we see for mixed use, some residential, commercial in the form of some retail, office uses, maybe some restaurant uses in those 3 parcels. Circulation road, obviously, interior to that. And then we have 2 medium density pods, one here and one on the south end of the project. Much more lower density, probably townhome type project, maybe some small lot single families also, especially up in this northern medium density parcel. All of it having trails throughout, some open space areas. These are 2 of the sort of steeper, heavily forested gulch areas. So really maintaining those as open space. Lots of trails tying into the trail system that you folks have already put in around the lake. And so a lot of trail connections down into there. Really trying to make a walkable community. That's what everybody wants these days, is something they can walk through their community. And with this, having this wonderful amenity here with the trail all the way around it, it would just be a fantastic community for us. The other thing that we've been talking about is some sort of a public-private partnership. As you see on the previous slide, the current property ends up in here, and there's a very nice piece down in here that the city owns. And what we'd like to do is continue the discussion and talk with everyone at the city about what this piece wants to be. How does this piece work into the overall development? And how can we create this public-private partnership and figure out a great use for that land that benefits the lake and all of the city's property, as well as this development, and ties all those together. So we don't have any specific ideas for what that use is yet, but we would like to explore that with you folks, with the city council, with the staff, and come up with some ideas that we can generate. And I don't know if we'll find the answer right away, but I think it's worth looking into over the next few months as we're working on a plan for this. That's really the extent of where we are with this plan right now. It's a very conceptual level. We look forward to coming back in, seeing you folks in the near future with some additional information, try to tie down some of the details, and work through the process. As I mentioned, the vacation is really step 1 of a multi-step process that we'll be going through with you folks over the next several months. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions for the applicants? Okay. Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Bring it back up here for discussion on the record. Any comments? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm getting a little out of order, but I'm getting there. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the vacation? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against the vacation? Seeing none, now I'll bring it back up here for comments on the record. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing and Can have further discussion and/or a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wallace?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve or recommend the BAC -10-13-4131 for the vacation of the Lake Ridge Village Lot 7 PUD final plot plan.
Have a motion?
Second.
You have 2 seconds. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Planning Commissioner Abbott?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sanders?
Aye.
Commissioner Haney?
Aye.
Commissioner Graham?
Aye.
Commissioner Bartolotta?
Aye.
Commissioner Duhan? Commissioner Banks? Commissioner Trozen?
Aye.
Chairman Phillips?
Aye. We will recommend that vacation to the city council. And as I said, we hope to see you again in the near future. Thank you very much. We move on to our second public hearing, which is redevelopment modification plan for Copperleaf Village. And again, I open the public hearing and ask Mr. McDonald for our exhibits.
Mr. Chairman, the city has 8 exhibits for their redevelopment modification plan matter. Number 1 is a staff report with attachments. Number 2 is the affidavit of publication in the Blue Springs Examiner. Number 3 is the application with attachments. Number 4 is the 185-foot notification map. Number 5 is a list of names and addresses of property owners within 185 feet of the site. Number 6 is a copy of the letter sent to those property owners. Number 7 is Title 4 Land Use Section, Blue Springs Code of Ordinances. Number 8 is the 2003 Comprehensive Plan. Those are all of the exhibits the city would offer into the record at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Holly.
Thank you. This, of course, a request for approval of amended redevelopment modification plan for Copperleaf Village. The property is located on the west side of Northwest 7 Highway. It is north of Northwest R.D. Mize Road and south of Hearns Avenue. It consists of approximately 5.55 acres. There's a nice history provided on page 3 of 8, and we will But as you can see, the City Council approved the redevelopment modification plan originally on August the 29th of 2005. There was a minor lot line that was done in 2005 as well. The preliminary plat was considered, and the final plat both together were considered on June 12th in 2006 by the Planning Commission, and the final plat went on to the City Council in June of 2006 as well. I'm going to skip the next 2 items. They're fairly minor. And then the Planning Commission did recommend the amendment to the redevelopment modification plan on January 13th in 2012, and March 5th, the City Council approved that, and if you will recall, that modification simply had to do with some dumpster enclosures that were located in the back and how those dumpsters were screened. And I think it had to do with some roof screening of the new building that was added on to the existing building on the north end. Though I think those were the primary issues with that modification. With this particular modification, this really is to address development of the lot that is on the corner of R.D. Mize and 7 Highway. And that lot in the past was the former Rent-A-Center property. Some of you will remember that. And if it was before that, I heard it was a Kinney Shoes possibly, but well before my time. So at any rate, it is that piece of property that they are wanting to incorporate into the overall redevelopment, Copperleaf redevelopment modification plan. Staff, let me bring there's a couple of things that I think are, from a plan perspective, are worth taking a look at. Okay. You can just scroll. Included in the staff report as an attachment was this list, and it is the list of the original modifications that were requested. And with this request for the amendment, the primary concerns were the landscape buffer along Highway 7. The code requires it to be 15 feet. They're requesting that it be continued similar to the existing modification area at 5 feet. And then stormwater, the stormwater control or the stormwater detention facility was another thing that was requested with the original modification. And when the Hardys is developed, of course, they would like that same modification, not having to provide for full stormwater detention and control. So that kind of gives you that. As far as the comments, page 5 through, looks like 8, talks about the requirements, and I think you've all had a chance to read those and see the staff comments related to each of those. They do meet the requirements for a approval of the redevelopment modification ordinance. Staff recommends approval of the modification plan with 6 conditions. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to stand for those and answer those, or hopefully answer them. And the applicant, I believe, is here as well.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Hawley?
Commissioner, I do have a question.
Ms. Banks?
On condition number 6, you talk about the north entrance for the proposed too close. So,
Yes. Yes.
and I guess I just need clarification. It says this access shall be a minimum of 125 feet. So
Okay.
what are they proposing there?
Okay, if you look up at the map, this access is the access we're talking about. It is, of course, this is the east-west access, the east-west interior drive. This is Highway 7 down here, and this access needs to be a minimum of 125 feet from this right-of-way, so it will need to be shifted. Based on where they have their islands currently, it almost makes sense that it be shifted somewhere up into here. But again, the bottom line is this is too close to Highway 7, so if they want to relocate an island and just shift it up so that it meets the minimum, they could do that as well, but it does need to meet the minimum.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Hawley? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation, please? And again, you will need to be sworn in.
Okay, I am Dan McGee with HDR Engineering, Inc. I'm here on behalf of Copperleaf Village LLC. Kevin Fitzpatrick had another city council meeting he had to attend tonight, so he's double booked. We've reviewed staff's recommendations and don't have any concerns with those comments. Some of those comments would be addressed through the site plan review and whatnot. Available if there's any questions or anything.
Can we go ahead and get your address, please?
Oh, sorry, yeah, 3741 Northeast Troon Drive, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this redevelopment modification plan? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this change? Please come forward, you'll need to be sworn in. And we'll need your name and address also.
Sure, my name is Karen Day, and it's Karyn. And the address is 104 Northwest Locust Drive here in Blue Springs. I've lived in here in Blue Springs for over 10 years. I've seen a lot of growth in the city since I moved here, and I am proud to call it home. I am not against Hardee's Corporation wanting to build in our great city. However, I do not feel the location of RD Mize and 7 Highway and the Copperleaf Shopping Center is the best choice. Between Mock Avenue and Vesper Street on 7 Highway, there are approximately a total of 10 fast food type restaurants already in existence. It's my understanding that Hardee's has been here in Blue Springs before. And in fact, it's my understanding that they were in what is now a used car lot approximately 2 doors down. If you've ever been into that Copperleaf Shopping Center at 5 o'clock on a weeknight, you will understand that it does not need added traffic from this Hardee's. Between the Point Dance Studio, Godfather's Pizza, Taco Bueno, Firehouse Subs, and Blue Springs Chiropractic, additional cars and food delivery trucks in this area will create chaos and create a dangerous situation. I have a daughter who is a senior here in Blue Springs who does attend the Point Dance Studio. She does drive herself to dance every night. With the addition of this Hardee's in that location, that will just add added traffic, and I don't know how they propose the food trucks to get in and out. You've got children attending that dance studio from ages 3 up to ages 18, and I worry about the safety of those children at that dance studio, plus the safety of any of the other children that are going into Godfather's or into Taco Bueno. So like I said, I'm not against them coming to our city, I'm just against them in this particular location, so I please ask you to not approve this.
Are there any questions for this witness? Okay, you do understand that the public hearing is actually on the redevelopment plan, not on Hardee's in particular.
Yes, but I think a fast food restaurant, no matter if it's Hardee's, Wendy's, whatever, a fast food restaurant in that location is not a good choice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak against this redevelopment plan? Okay. Bring it back up here for comments on the record. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any further discussion and/or motions on the redevelopment plan?
Just a question.
Okay.
Just to get it clear, I mean, what we're actually approving right now is the redevelopment of the entranceway right there.
What we're approving right now is to add this piece of property to the redevelopment, the original redevelopment plan, because it was left out when we originally approved the redevelopment plan for Copperleaf, because they didn't own it at the time.
Okay, so we're not really approving or disapproving the location of Hardee's in this?
Not in this particular piece, that is correct.
So may I ask you a question?
You may.
Why is, this is just, I guess Hardee's is just coming saying if we do this, this is where they want to be.
That's correct.
But it doesn't mean that we have to approve that. We're just going to approve this.
If we don't approve the redevelopment plan, then they would be subject to our current ordinances to come into this site, which they get some easing on some of those requirements by being in the redevelopment plan. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Does that help? Mr. Trozen.
Mr. Chairman, one of the conditions pertains to an updated traffic study that reviews the infrastructure of this development as it impacts the streets that are adjacent to it. Does the study also take into consideration the proposed use and what the parking and access configuration is within the development itself?
I don't believe it does, no.
Is that something that the staff would be willing to consider as an amendment to that condition if this moves forward?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? Motions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Trozen.
I'd like to make a motion in regards to approving case number RMP-10-13-4125 pertaining to the Copperleaf Village. And in regards to the 6 conditions, amending condition number 5, that the updated traffic study not only include the impacts of the surrounding transportation infrastructure, but it also takes a look at the interior traffic circulation within the proposed plan amendment.
Second.
Including the new proposed usage.
Yes, sir.
I have a motion and a second. Are you clear on that, Karen?
Yes.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Planning Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Sanders?
Aye.
Commissioner Haney?
Aye.
Commissioner Graham?
Aye.
Commissioner Bartolotta? Commissioner Duhan? Commissioner Banks?
Aye.
Commissioner Trozen?
Aye.
Commissioner Abbott?
Aye.
Chairman Phillips?
Aye. And that recommendation will go to the City Council for approval. We now move to, we're going to hear items number 4, 5, and 6 all together. Items 4 and 5 are preliminary and final plat for this same piece of property in Copperleaf Village, and number 6 is the site plan design review for Hardee's. We'll hear them all, presentations all together, and then we'll vote on them separately. Mr. Hawley.
Thank you. I think we'll start by talking, I'll separate them a little bit by talking about the preliminary and final plat for Copperleaf Village. And currently Copperleaf Village it consists of 1 lot and 2 tracts. And this particular preliminary and final plat will then subdivide this into actually 4 lots. There will be 1 lot for the large, by large I should say, for the shopping center building that is at the rear or west portion of the site. And then it would create a separate lot here at the corner of R.D. Mize, and a separate lot for Taco Bueno, or the center of the development, and then a 4th lot for at the corner of Hearns Road, East Hearns Road. Again, there has been a preliminary plat and a final plat for this particular property. The final plat was approved by the City Council in June of 2006. So we're coming forward with a, obviously, new preliminary and final plat. Couple of issues that are provided in the staff report or defined in the staff report. The applicant would be required and will be required with the final plat to install sidewalk along Northwest 7 Highway and Northwest R.D. Mize Road. That would be the frontage of the particular corner that is coming forward for development. They also would be required with this plat to, if there are sidewalks, any other sidewalks within the public right-of-way, that would be, this would be the time when they would be required. I think that Hearns Avenue has sidewalk on the north side of Hearns, so I don't believe they would be required to put sidewalk on the south side. Street improvements, with the original development, there were street improvements that were required along 7 Highway, possibly along Hearns and also along R.D. Mize. With the original development, they did not install those improvements along R.D. Mize, and we are asking for proposed improvements to R.D. Mize Road and Hearns, just to R.D. Mize Road right now. And again, that's part of what the traffic study will confirm, is whether or not those improvements remain, still are needed with this new user at the corner. The applicant would also be required to provide easements on the plat, 15 to 25-foot landscape easement along R.D. Mize Road, and a 7 to 15-foot easement along Northwest Hearns Avenue. Assuming that the redevelopment modification plan is approved, the landscape easement they would need along Highway 7 would be less than is stated in the report. In the report, it stated 15 to 25 feet. That wouldn't be required if the amendment to the to the redevelopment modification plan is approved, and assuming that it does end up going forward that way, they would need a 5-foot landscape easement through there. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat and conditional approval of the final plat with the 9 staff conditions. And Commissioner Trozen, I've made a note on condition number 5 that the updated traffic study should also include the internal circulation. So that would be included with that, but when you make a recommendation, should you choose, you may want to amend that similarly to what we did with the redevelopment modification.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Moving on to the site plan and design review. I think one of the focuses of the Copperleaf development, of course, has been with the Hardys that's proposed. And let's go to their, I think we'll start with their site plan and just have that up as we discuss the staff report. I'm going to rotate that just one time clockwise, I think. Maybe 2 times clockwise.
Mr. Hawley, I think I may change my mind here. Maybe we should hear these separately. They are 2 separate applicants.
Would you, okay, let me, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, to rotate this one more time, and then if you would like, I can sit down and you can talk about the preliminary and final plat, and I can come back up for the site plan design review.
I think that might be best, since there are 2 different applicants on these 2
Absolutely,
things.
absolutely, okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back. Are there any questions for Mr. Hawley on the preliminary and final plat? Okay. Would the applicant on the final plat, the plats, like to come up and make their presentation, please?
All right, Dan McGee, HDR Engineering again. Many of these recommendations are similar to the redevelopment modification plan suggestions or recommendations. As far as the traffic study goes, I haven't personally reviewed the original traffic study, but we'll take a review of that and coordinate with the city to see, outline some parameters on exactly what should be studied. And we can take a look at the internal circulation throughout the site as requested. So we'll take a look at that. I don't believe there's any other conditions that we have any concerns with. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Okay, first item would be the preliminary plat. Any discussion and/or motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Trozen.
I would recommend approval of the preliminary plat PP-10-13-4126 for Copperleaf Village with the listed staff conditions and the modified condition pertaining to the traffic study.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary plat has been approved. And now we move to the final plat.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Trojan.
I would recommend approval of the final plat for Copperleaf Village, lots 1 through 4 in Tract A. It's case number PF-20-13-4127 with the listed conditions and including the modified condition pertaining to the traffic study.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That final plat will go to City Council for approval. Now we'll move on to the site plan for Hardee's. Sorry about that, Mr. Hawley.
No, that's fine. That seemed, oops. I think that made a lot of sense in the sense that they were the same applicant with redevelopment modification. So this particular application is for site plan and design review approval, and it is for the 2,350 square foot fast food restaurant and drive-through window has landscaping and the associated parking. The project is, of course, located at the corner of R.D. Mize and Southeast 7 Highway, and the parcel that is created for this is about .84 acres. Property is zoned general business, and that zoning district does allow for this particular type of use. I won't go over all the previous actions and approval because I think we've done that with the redevelopment modification plan as well as the preliminary and final plat. The access provided for the interior drives the access are provided from the interior drives of Copperleaf Village. So this is the primary north-south interior drive of Copperleaf Village, and this is the one access. And then again, the east-west primary drive, and this would be the southerly primary drive. And we've already talked a little bit about this access point, so I won't go into it much further. The parking and the stacking do meet the minimum requirements of the UDC. The applicant is or will be required to show designated loading space, and I would assume that would be towards the west portion of their building, which I think is where their receiving door is located. The applicant will also be required to install the sidewalk along Northwest 7 Highway and R.D. Mize. That corresponds to condition number 5 in this staff report. Again, nothing different than was required with the preliminary and final plat. The signage was provided, details of the signage were provided in your packet. You should know that Hardee's submitted those, but that they are not approved with this site plan and design review approval as long as they meet the city code requirements. They will be approved through our standard sign permitting. If they want to do anything outside of that requirement, they'll come back to you in the form of a master alternative sign plan. That corresponds with condition number 4 in this particular staff report. Ground-mounted equipment, as you know, needs to be screened according to code. That corresponds to condition number 2 in the staff report. Similarly, details of a trash enclosure have not been provided, but will need to be provided with the building permit drawings, and that corresponds with condition number 12 in the staff report. The applicant did provide a landscape plan. Let's see, we can't go to that. Oops. However, I'm not sure we have that in the packet now that I'm going through these drawings. I don't think that we do. The applicant did provide, however, a landscape plan, and the, on page 6 of 11.
Scott emailed that.
Scott emailed that? Great, okay. Thank you, so you do, okay, good. On page 6 of 11, the landscape chart is there, and you'll see that they are proposing 99 fewer plant units than is required for this particular development. Excuse me, there's 76 plant units that are required for the parking lot, of which 75% should be large deciduous trees, and that would equate to 57 plant units. They're proposing only 30 plant units to be incorporated through large deciduous trees in the parking lot. So to sum that up, what we're trying to say here is that they are short on plant units, and they are also short on the number of large deciduous trees within the parking lot based on the code requirement. There are 2 conditions, both condition number 9 and condition number 11, that are somewhat designed to address that. We suggest that some of the buffer landscaping that they are short, they put into their open spaces and add some plant units to those spaces to try to reduce that number from 99. But we also are recommending that this landscape plan be considered an alternative compliance landscape plan. And the reason for that is because with the reduction of the landscape buffer that is provided along 7 Highway from 15 feet down to 5 feet. That really does limit the number of plant units they can get there. And the idea of making that up on the property, it could be done, but as that that landscape matures, they will just end up cutting it out anyway. They will have to, because plants will be so close together as they mature. So we would rather see them just start out with a landscape plan that can last into the future without doing that sort of thing. Stormwater detention. The one thing that I neglected to mention with the final plat, but it was a condition of the final plat and is also included with this, is that although they are granted some relief from the stormwater requirements, we would like to see them do some best management practice type things for stormwater, and that would include capturing some of that water into their landscape islands and having that filter down through, permeate down through. So that corresponds with condition number 13. The building design, and I did see that we have that. So let's go back to that. The building design for this particular is really made of 3 primary materials, and that would be the ephes, which appears as stucco, the stone veneer, and the storefront tempered glass. The building form is pretty generic in shape, with the flat roof hidden behind parapet walls and capped then at the top with metal flashing. Along with the primary exterior materials, it's also adorned with some awnings above the windows, as you can see, above the doorway, primary entrances, and then they have some designs that go around the upper portions of the facade. Staff would recommend that the awnings that are above the windows be lowered so that they shade the windows for which they're associated. The applicant can certainly discuss that with you if they would like. They have some concerns about pulling those awnings down with the banding that is there, but our suggestion is that they either interrupt the banding and pull the awning down, or that they put the awning below the banding so that it just covers more of the window and shades more of the window. We also would recommend, as you can see, the rear facade, which is the west facade, is a pretty plain facade. They have made efforts to reduce some of the equipment that was back there. This is considered for them the back of building. There was a ladder, and they removed that and put that inside. It was an access to the roof. And they've also tried to limit some of the equipment back there and intend to screen the equipment that is back there with landscaping. So the lower portions of that building will have landscaping that does some screening. Staff would recommend that they put maybe a rigid awning or some sort of awning over that receiving door. And we do understand that that awning may have to be just a little bit higher, only because they will have materials coming in and out of that door, and sometimes the lower awnings can just get damaged with that kind of transport. So we understand that that one may have to be up, but it still would add some interest. And we also are recommending that they carry the star pattern on the upper facade of the rear or west facade as well. That corresponds to condition number 6 and 7. Staff is recommending approval of this particular site plan design review with the 14 conditions as provided on page 10 and 11. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions on the site plan design for Mr. Hawley? Mr. Hawley, was there any discussion on this? It looks like this is a pretty stock design for them. About the fact that the door on the east elevation really doesn't serve any purpose other than to walk into the drive-through lane?
Well, there is a walkway, and we can go back to the site plan.
There is a walkway, but again, it just...
And the question, I suppose, is will people access it from the parking lot and or will they just access the other door, and that is, the other door is considered the main entrance? No, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about it, other than the fact that because that does front to Highway 7, the idea of that being an entrance point is something that staff would agree with. That's all I would say to that. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about it, though.
Just
What there was discussion about, though, was that we did tell them, because that elevation fronts to Highway 7, that we wanted that elevation to be a nice elevation, and that it should be definitely dressed up.
I agree with that 100%. I
Right.
just hate to see doors that go nowhere.
Well,
I guess it's an extra fire exit if nothing else, but.
there you go. And we think people may use it. You never know.
Yes.
Mr. Hawley, was there, in regards to the site plan, you can go to that real quick.
Sure. Okay, that's probably as good a site plan as we'll get.
And the entrance and exit to the Hardee's property, if I'll call it that, on the west side there, was there any discussion of moving that entrance and exit and maybe a little reconfiguration of the drive-through, moving that entrance farther to the south so that you don't have the interference with parking spaces backing out, traffic coming and going, and also the proposed uses of that building in Lot 1?
Sure. So you're talking about moving this entrance to the south?
To the south. I know it has to stay 125 feet back from the intersection with R.D. Mize, but that would probably still put it about where that car is perpendicular along there.
Well, I'll tell you, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about it. One of the fears of putting it back here was that the drive-through would end up backing up this way instead of backing up on their property. And so the idea of putting the access point here contained the drive-through to their property. So the answer to your question is, we didn't talk a lot about moving that further to the south. We had some concerns with that.
I was just trying to see if there was a way to eliminate the impact on those parking spaces, because they'll be backing out
Up here.
as traffic will be coming down and to get into the Hardee's.
Absolutely correct. It's always been a concern with this development because their main aisle, this is one of their main aisles, and as you know, there is parking that goes from this end of the building all the way to the other. It never stops. At one point, we had tried to break it up with some landscaping, but one of the tenants didn't like that idea, and so it was approved to be removed. But again, whenever you have a main access drive coming down through here and you have parking that backs into it, there is definitely, it's a concern, potential for collision.
Was there any, when we're talking about moving the entrance on the north side, is that going to
Talking about
conflict
moving-
with the trash enclosure?
Okay, now we're talking about this entrance.
That entrance,
Okay,
right.
yes, we are talking about moving that one a little bit this way so that it meets the minimum 125 feet. And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Is it
Mr.
going to
Chairman?
interfere with that trash enclosure if you lined it up with that other aisle of traffic, or?
No, I wouldn't think it would I mean, if it comes down here, they may end up shifting this somewhat, but if it comes down here, I think they can probably still make it work with the trash enclosure, but obviously, when your doors are open, it could hinder that, but they shouldn't be open. They should be, for the most part, closed. But that's just one of the issues. That's a code compliance issue. So, I mean, their other option really with that would be to eliminate that driveway altogether and have all of their access up here, which is something that, staff wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that either, to be honest with you. I mean, their access needs to come internally, so.
I know the current restaurant doesn't have any access on either one of the two theater aisles.
That's correct. It does not. But it does take its access from the main north-south drive. That's where it gets its access.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward and make their presentation, please?
Hi, I'm Brent Sontag with Haney and Associates Architects. We're based out of Wichita, Kansas, and I'm here on behalf of the owner, Greg Gastineau, with Rosenfield Restaurants. The address there is 1726 South Hillside Street, Wichita, Kansas, 67211. And basically, I've heard a few issues associated with the site plan, some concerns. We're okay with all of the conditions proposed. In addition to the conditions proposed on the actual comments, I've heard some conditions here as well tonight, some concerns. With regards to the drive-through door that goes to nowhere, if you will, we're okay with omitting that. It's not integral with this location. We do not need it for this location. We can omit that door, so we'd be all right with that. I'd heard that about the landscaping screening of utilities. That's the intention. We've moved roof access into the building, inside of the building, so that's screened as well. With regards to the trash enclosure, there's a concern about trash enclosure location with regards to the modified entrance location to the site. We actually have moved, since the comments we had seen, we've actually moved the trash enclosure location. So I guess it's over here, right before you enter the drive-through, just adjacent to that drive-through entrance. We've moved the trash enclosure to that location. So it should not in any way be affected or affect the drive-through traffic. In addition to that, the trash is not a very common, pickup and delivery to the extent that it would affect drive-through in a substantial way, entering the drive-through location. And we are okay with all the comments, city comments, and I guess if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant? Ms. Banks?
You were up on North 7 Highway. Is this the same? My mic's not on. We had Hardee's up north. So is this the one from there to here?
I do not believe this is the same owner.
Okay.
Going to look at Tony Parrish with Rosenfield Restaurants is also here tonight. Not the same owner, different owner.
And had you considered any other location than right here on this congested?
I think this was the ideal location we had looked at. And Tony, do you know if we had any other previous locations we had considered for this location? It seems to me that this best accommodated our suit for the restaurant here with regards to parking and just in general, a busy location, which is where we like to be able to operate. So we have considered other locations. This seemed to be a best fit.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Ms.
If
Dumont?
you take the door out, what are you going to replace there so that it has a nice eye appeal facing 7 Highway?
We would have a stone veneer wainscot, and this is consistent throughout the building. We've actually changed from a standard EFIS finish, which is a synthetic stucco finish. We have modified that to a stone wainscot per the staff's request. We would maintain that stone wainscot, and up above, we have considered placing some aesthetic stars, kind of the decorative star feature on our main entrance elevation around the back of the building. With regards to the canopy on that location, we've actually incorporated the new black metal canopy. It's a flat canopy at the 9-foot 8-inch awning line. So essentially, we'd be adding a canopy to the back. We'd be adding a stone wainscot to the back as well, a decorative star EFIS finish to the back of the building. So that it incorporates design as well. It's not just the back of a building. It's got a dressed-up look per Hardee's specifications.
Okay, but what about the front entrance that you talked about, that I talked about? What would you still have that like entry look there, but with just a plain window or something there instead of a?
Well, on the front, actually, I guess the door I was referring to was out of the driveway specifically by the drive-through lane. The front entrance, it actually has a tower system there. So that in general, in its very nature, is kind of a decorative appeal on that road. So we've got decorative awnings, we've got that are lit by LEDs, and we've also got a tower feature entering that that door.
And I'm actually, if you want the door there, I don't think it has to be removed. I'm just always curious about why things are put where they're put.
Yeah, sometimes it's just for an employee to be able to serve if there's a kind of backup in the line for an individual to be able to pull forward so they can get their food in the meantime while the traffic runs through, which is why we provide the drive-through door. But as far as, and then the second door on the east, that's, our main entrance, one of our main entrances, so it's an integral door to the life safety.
And I do want that, definitely want that quality look on that front facade, so.
Absolutely. And I'd heard also the awnings, about the awnings and the height of the awnings, specifically covering the windows, or the previous submittal not covering the windows. We've actually coordinated with the awning manufacturer, and we're going to accommodate that request by building a deeper or a taller awning, if you will, so that it mounts in the same location, maintains the EFIS banding, and extends down to the window height. So it will, in fact, cover the top of the window per staff's request.
So it will actually provide a little bit of shade inside?
Correct, yep.
Is it EFIS or stucco?
EFIS. Now, that's only above the wainscot line, so essentially 3 foot and above would be EFIS. We also have, as I mentioned before, kind of the decorative stars in the EFIS, and we have EFIS reveals throughout as well, and an EFIS band that runs at 9'8".
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bring it back up here for discussion. As I said, I'm just more curious about the door than wanting it actually removed, so don't take that into too seriously. Motions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Graham.
I would move to approve the site plan design review for Hardee's Restaurant, SPD R-9-13-4117 with the 14 staff conditions.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That site plan has been approved. Thank you. And we move now to item number 7 and 8, which is a preliminary and final plat for a Wendy's remodel.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilbur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We're looking at a preliminary and final plat for consideration for the northeast corner of 7 Highway and Northwest Vesper. Let's see if we can find that. Oh. There we go. It's at 310 Northwest 7 Highway. It's approximately 0.73 acres, and it is zoned general business along 7 Highway. The applicant's proposing to, or is remodeling the Wendy's restaurant there. They have a 748 square feet addition as well as an entire remodel of that location. The existing building is 2,429 square feet. With the new development, they are required to do preliminary and final plat. The new addition is 748 square feet, which is below the 750 square feet requirement for the site plan and design review, but they are over the 25% of floor area of the existing building with the new addition, so they will, or they are required to bring the site into conformance with current codes, which they are doing through the building permit process, and that has been reviewed through that process. With the plat requirements, they are required to add a 5-foot sidewalk along 7 Highway. as well, and staff also required an access drive of 24 feet that extends from 7 Highway to the east property line. That is for a future access and also possible cross-access to the property adjacent to it to the east, if that property owner was interested in getting a cross-access in the future. As of right now, that property owner does not seem interested in that possibility, but it is there on the plat for any future possibility of that. The plat also has a 15-foot landscape easement along 7 Highway for the transition buffer, which is required per the section 407 for the landscaping. And the remaining updates, as the landscaping and parking and ADA requirements have been through the building permit process, but as far as the plat, there are the easements for the landscape, the access easement, and as well as another sanitary easement, and the sidewalk. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Wilbur? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward and make their presentation, please?
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Warman with Warman Architects, 1828 Swift, North Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you very much for allowing us to present tonight. I am also representing, in addition to representing the Legacy Restaurant Group, I'm kind of representing Olson Associates. They are our civil engineer that prepared the plat. We are in agreement with staff's recommendations and conditions. And if you have any questions of me, I would be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? I guess we don't. I'm going to do something I don't do very often.
Oh, dear.
Well, I know that this has absolutely no bearing on the preliminary plat, and it will not affect my judgment on that. I am very disappointed in the way this project is going forward. I think Wendy's has intentionally come in and followed the very fine letter of the law, but not the intent of the law. I really wish we had had a site plan and design review on this project, because you've destroyed 95% of the building, and you're still taking part of it down even as you're rebuilding the new part. And
I'd be happy to provide some explanation to that, if you'll allow.
I'll listen to your explanation. I don't think anything will sway my opinion that this is what should have happened.
No, and I appreciate that, and I can understand that and understand why you think that. And let me preface this by saying that staff's been wonderful. They've been very helpful, and we brought to them in the beginning and laid this on the table that what our goals were here. And Wendy's corporate used to own this property. Wendy's corporate has divested, I believe, all of their corporate locations and sold them to franchisees. The franchisees, or long-term leased them. I think that's actually more the case here, like a 20-year lease. The Legacy Restaurant Group is now the controlling entity for this. Wendy's corporate has incentivized these franchisees to remodel and upgrade these old, tired stores. I mean, everybody's heart's in the right place. And as sometimes large corporations do, and I can't speak to this, they have put extreme pressure on these franchisees to complete these updates in an extremely short period of time. So I wear my heart on my sleeve here. We were asked to come to the city, talk to staff. They were very forthright, very straightforward with us, and say, how can we do this and meet the time schedule? Because right now I have contractors with lights on out there trying to get this project finished. They have to be opened up by the end of November. And there would have been no way we could have done that going through the more traditional Plan Commission, City Council, dates, deadlines, submittal process. It was in no way meant to circumnavigate that process or any of that. Understood completely that we had to bring everything up to current requirements for the site, landscaping, parking, all of that kind of thing. I think you'll be happy with the look of the building. It's a very unique design. I have purchased and anticipated questions or, morbid curiosity at the very least. There's only one other store like this in our metro area. We were the architects for it. We just finished it. It's open at 91st and Metcalf in the city of Overland Park. Also a community like yours that has very high standards for materials, all kinds of things. It was very well received, and through their process, it's got very nice materials. It's very unique. It's very modern. It's going to be a huge improvement to the old tired store. Architecture is a lot like art. I realize that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but there's no cutting back on, again, quality of materials. We hear a lot about the material EIFS, and it's used a lot. It's really overused. This building has almost no EIFS on it, just a little window surround. It's brick. This material board is for a prototype. It's not specifically for this one. This one will be mainly brick. It was brick before, but it'll have the wood tile, the dark bronze, and some of these other materials on it as well. I don't know if you have a landscape plan in this up there or not. And I did bring this. And I apologize, I would have made colored boards. We didn't have a lot of heads up that we needed to do this. I'll let Sarah see if she's got it up there. There's a tremendous amount of landscaping that's being added to this site for the purpose of enhancing the way the site looks. It's a very tiny site. There's a lot about this site, even though the building looks like it's pretty much been, demolished. There's a lot about the project and the site and the function and the operation is staying the same. The curb cuts are exactly the same. The traffic flow is exactly the same. The drive-up window, the way it operates is all identical to what there was before. It's just getting a new skin.
It's getting a lot more than a new skin.
Well, I mean,
you took this down to two by two columns and a couple of 3-foot brick walls and a roof that was supported by 2x4s. And now, today I drove by and part of that roof is being removed.
Well, those are some damage or some rust and things like that.
And at least one of those brick walls has come down as well. So I really question whether there will be any of the original building left when you're finished. And I understand you're under a time constraint. I appreciate the fact that you're reusing the site and not going out to the Parkway or something like that and sticking on 7 Highway so we don't end up with another empty building.
Sure.
I just don't like the process, and I have looked at the design, and to be honest, there is a piece of the design that, had it come before us in design review, I would have voted against, because you've put the walk-in cooler on the back of the building and not tied it into the building in any way, shape, or form. It's just a metal box on the back of the building, and it looks terrible.
It will be screened substantially with landscaping, and
It's still a metal box on the back of the building, and it doesn't match height, it doesn't match materials, it doesn't match anything. That's one of my pet peeves on fast food restaurants, is that this happens way too often. I don't like it to happen here.
I understand.
And I wasn't able to address that because we didn't get this site plan review. So, again, I'm disappointed. I understand this is the letter of the law and that you're complying. I don't like it.
I understand.
So, any other comments, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bring it back up here for comments, motions on the preliminary plat, which is what we are voting on, not on the design review.
Preliminary and final plan?
preliminary, well, we'll do them separately, so the preliminary first.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion for approval for the preliminary plat PP 10-13-4132 with the two staff revisions.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Preliminary plat has been approved, and we move on to the final plat. Mr. Wallace, would you like to go again?
Sure, I'll do it again. I'd like to make a motion for approval of the final plat for PF 10-13-4133 with the staff comments.
I have a motion and
Second.
a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Preliminary plat's been approved. The final plat will go to the city council for their approval with our recommendation. We now move on to items number 9 and 10, which are two final plats for Parkway Estates. Mr. Holly.
Thank you. We get the site plan up here. Okay, this request is for two final plats again. As Mr. Chairman said, excuse me, it's for approval of Parkway Estates PRO final plats for 19 and plat number 20. This particular project, I think most of you are familiar with. It is located, these two plats in particular are located on the northeast corner of Adams Dairy Parkway and Moreland School Road, and they are east of Monterey Drive. Kind of hard to see on this, but Monterey Drive is the interior drive that comes and runs through the Parkway Estates development on the east side of Adams Dairy Parkway. Going through on page 3 of 6, the previous actions and approvals, probably the key actions that took place as far as the plat is concerned is that the preliminary plat was considered by the Planning Commission and approved on July the 24th in 2006. There have been several final plats that have come through since then, all gone through council and been approved, as you well know. I think that really is probably what's most germane. There was an amended preliminary plat that was also approved by the Planning Commission on August 25th of 2008. That's probably most germane to these two final plats. The lot layouts conform to the conceptual plan that was approved, as well as the preliminary plat for both the 19th and the 20th plat. The utilities, as far as sanitary sewer and water, have been completed. Stormwater management plans for the Parkway Estates subdivision were approved with the previous development. They may still have some work to do on the stormwater detention basins that are located along this area of the development. There's a detention pond up here, as well as, I believe, one down here in the corner. I'm not sure that those are completed yet, but they will have to be completed prior to recording of the final plat, at any rate. Easements have been provided, sidewalks, they're required to put sidewalks along Monterey Avenue. Street improvements for Southeast Carmen Court, Southeast Crimson Court had not been completed at the time of the staff report. I was out there today. It looks as though those improvements are in, although I don't believe they have been accepted by the city. Is that correct, Ben? This is for Carmen Court and for Crimson Court, the two cul-de-sac streets.
And which item was it? I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Parkway Estates.
And which utility were you referring to? I apologize.
It doesn't matter. But the street improvements have been put in, and I'm pretty sure they haven't been accepted yet at this point. The open space and landscaping meets the original, again, conceptual plan as well as the preliminary plat design. Staff is recommending approval of both final plats, and there are 9 conditions related to those final plats. With that, I will answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the staff? Thank you, Mr. Holly.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation, please?
My name is Randy Salee with Salee Homes Incorporated. Address is 2610 Northeast R.D. Mize Road, Grand Valley, Missouri. And we are actually in the process of finalizing our dirt work and our stormwater detention. And I believe our streets have been, I believe they've all been inspected and compaction tests were all ran, and we did have Public Works out at the site here last week, and in their favor, I think, with everything that we're doing. We're going to continue on with, I think there's 27 platted lots in these 2 phases, and meet the intention of the original preliminary plat that was submitted a few years ago. So, but if there's any questions from Planning Commission, I'll be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Do you have any concerns with any of the conditions that staff has?
None, not at all. Yeah, I think we can comply with all those conditions.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bring it back up here for discussion. Comments? Motions? Mr. Haney, separately. Number 9, yeah.
Agenda 9, Parkway Estates, final plat, PF 10, 13, 41, 29. Move for approval with the subject conditions.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That final plat will go to the City Council for approval. And we move on to number 10.
Number 10, Parkway Estates, final plat, PF 10, 13, 4130. Move for approval with the existing conditions.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that final plat will also go back to the City Council for approval with our recommendation. Move on to item number 11, which is an amended final plat for the estates at Chapman Farms. Mr. Holly.
Up again, but we are getting close to the end, so I guess
We're getting
they're getting there. Absolutely. This is a request for approval of amended final plat for the estates at Chapman Farms. This particular property is located on the west side, Southwest 7 Highway. It is north of Southwest Colburn Road. Consists of approximately 19 acres, and the property is zoned single-family with a restricted overlay and a planned unit development. It is, this is of course part of the Chapman Farms development. The applicant is requesting that this plat, nothing is changing as far as the lots or the streets, sizes, nothing. What is changing and what they're requesting is to amend the minimum floor area classification. Excuse me, and as it is described on page 3 of 6, what they're asking for is to reduce the minimum floor area classification from a classification E, which is 1,800 square feet, to a classification F, which is a 1,600 square foot minimum for the ranch style homes. They would all have 3-car garages on the ranches, that's a requirement. And then they would like to change the classification from an A classification, which is 2,600 square feet, to a classification C, which is a 2,200 square foot minimum for the 2-story homes. A little background on this particular development had probably the easiest way to summarize this particular development is that it was originally approved and it was thought to be one of the higher-end developments within the Chapman Farms area. The City Council approved the concept plan in 2006, so quite some time ago. The preliminary plat and the final plat for this phase of the estates at Chapman Farms was approved in early January, or January 7th to be exact, of 2008. So it has sat for quite some time. As you know, the economy changed and that really slowed everything, obviously everything down. And the property has since reverted back to the bank, and the bank now is working with the developer, and the developer is looking at what they feel is economically feasible on this property, hence the request to come forward and amend the final plat to reduce these minimum floor areas on the property. They will need to provide us with an, let's see, I wanted to bring a few things up here. The developer, or proposed developer, I know, provided you with several different floor plans and housing elevations. I'll put those up on the overhead just so you can take a look at them. But in essence, the few things that they need to do with this particular final plat, they do need to update the recorded copy of the covenants, codes, and restrictions to reflect what their minimum floor areas are. Sidewalks on both sides of Southwest Brookwed Drive that border the tracks will be required to be built, have an escrow submitted. Maintenance bonds for the streets, sanitary sewers, and storm sewers need to be provided prior to City Council approval of this amended final plat. Again, the minimum floor areas we've already discussed, and I won't go over those again. Staff does recommend approval of the amended final plat with the 12 conditions that are provided on page 5 and 6 of 6. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for staff on this proposal? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hawley.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation, please?
Separate.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it? And then I just page down.
Okay. We're good.
Hi, I'm Kevin Inyart. Tonight, working on behalf of DAK Realty DevCo. I'm Vice President, General Manager. I live here in Blue Springs, 1601 Southwest 19th Street, 64015. In short, I'm going to start because when I saw the agenda for tonight, and I saw the notes on it, I actually kind of panicked a little bit, and I called Jim real quick, and I said, Jim, we're not asking for that big of a drop in square footages. And then I realized that the classifications go by, I think they're 200 square foot increments. And so I'll start by taking something, or hopefully saying something that'll give you a little more ease. What we're actually asking for is a change in the minimum square footage, floor square footage for a ranch from 1,900 to 1,700, and then for all others, 26 to 23. And we would be willing to record that as a note on the final plat and memorialize that in our CC&Rs so that they're, you're not dropping that additional 100 square feet on all plans. So start out with looks like, oh, there we go. Just to give you a little bit of where we're at on this, this is the overall preliminary plat for the estates at Chapman Farms. The area highlighted in yellow, which you can kind of faintly see, Brookside Drive is coming in let's see, right here, from 7 Highway sits down this direction. You got 2 commercial lots, and then you come past the villa, proposed future villa product here, and then here's actually the entrance to our community. As you come on back, this area that's highlighted yellow, coming back, picks up about 3 lots there, and then back around this curve and these 2 cul-de-sacs. That's the already on the ground first plat. Everything's in, infrastructure's in, it's ready to go. What the current developer is planning on doing is, here is the future pool lot for this community. I don't know what the original plans as far as size and price for that were. What we are planning on doing is somewhere in the range of ballpark $300,000 swimming pool, 0 entry, so it kind of goes on a 90-degree angle. You got the 0 entry walk in, and then you get into the deeper area past that. And then either in the concrete decking or there's a part of the 0 entry, we'll put in a fountain for the kids. Of course, the cabana house. And then, you know, we have some challenges with this site, and so what we're going to do to try, because of where we sit off of 7 Highway, from a marketing standpoint, it makes it a little bit more challenging driving the traffic back to this location. And so what we plan on doing is, this here is our entry. We have a small monument right here, and then of course you've got the 3 pillars here and the 3 pillars here. This has already been landscaped. I've met with 3 landscape contractors out there so far, and what we're planning on doing is probably ripping out or redoing most of what's on that island. We may add some turf area to the front of that so that we could, one of the things that's always driven me nuts is you drive past existing communities, the ones that have been in the ground for 15, 20 years, and the landscaping is so grown up, you no longer can see the monumentation for it. And so from a directional standpoint, people have a hard time knowing when they've entered the community. And so what we're going to do in front of that monument, which right now today there's nothing in front of that monument, so what we do will be an improvement to what's on the ground today. Add the turf area, irrigate it, and then I know it's a burden long-term on a year-to-year basis, but plant annuals, something with some color there, something that'll pop that. You have the 2 vertical trees back behind the monument, and so what we're going to do is provide some serious uplighting, covered, directional, but uplighting towards that monument, and then also shining up on the 2 trees so that from, again, coming back to 7 Highway as you drive by at night, you can see that lit up and know that we've got something going on back there. And that's where it ties into the swimming pool. I saw through the notes, and I completely agree with staff. I think the original plans way back when for that pool was showing parking, accessing and pulling straight off of Conchise Drive, that main drive there. In other words, you weren't pulling into a parking lot and parking, you were just pulling straight in and parking. And I agree with them. From an aesthetic standpoint, we would like to add probably more of a berm. I don't know if I'm going to berm that up yet or not because of, again, the goal of 7 Highway. But add the landscaping there with 2 separate, sorry, I get a little carried away, those 2 separate entries into that parking lot. But going back to the discussion of 7 Highway, adding some serious uplighting back there on that swimming pool area too. Where we are fortunate is the topography, because 7 Highway kind of sits up on a vista, and so from that point, the Brookside Drive actually drops and then rises back up as you start to pass our monument. And so from 7 Highway, with this uplighting at night, you should get a great view as far as trying to pull traffic down in there. The pool itself, I've got 3 plans and 3 estimates already. We would, if all goes well, and that's a big contingent, I know, but if all goes well, we would like to get that pool underway now within the next 60 days and shoot, I don't know if we'll make it or not, but shoot for a Memorial Day 2014 opening. That, and then a requirement of staff, something that we're going to do is put the walking trails in for the first phase with the landscaping redone there, and then there are some areas that we don't own, which is the future villas, and then the 2 commercial lots up there on 7 Highway. I have talked to Flanders, I believe it is, that owns the southwest corner up there. I don't have anything memorialized in writing, but in our verbal conversation,
I think they're going to be okay. What we would like to do is put some street trees, plant them all the way up to 7 Highway. We don't own it, but we want to go ahead and, again, selling this price of home is more about the feel of the neighborhood than anything else, and so we want to provide more of a relaxing, calming feel as our prospective buyers are pulling into the community. And then with that entry monument, in addition to what we were planning on doing on just the island itself, on either side of that, of Brookside Drive, it's a nice little weed patch that's been well maintained. And so we're going to take that down to bare earth and then either hydro seed that if we can catch the right time to do it, or sod that with irrigation so that we can keep that nice and green at all times throughout the growing season. And then supplement additional landscaping on either side there. And then additionally pull that on down. Where the landscaping kind of stops today is right back in here. You get a little bit behind that monument and the landscaping kind of stops. What we'd like to do is go ahead and pull that on down to this corner, pull that on down to this corner. So really beef this up. In addition to that, another one of the challenges that we have with this piece is what's existing on 7 Highway. At our location, just directly to the south of us, on that same west side of 7 Highway, we do have the tattoo parlor and Russo's Bar. And not knocking Russo's Bar, I'm just saying for upper end homes, traditionally, you don't like to pull past the tattoo parlor and the bar to get there. Although we will be putting a significant investment in this, we would also like to create an alternative front door. And so what we will be doing is working with city, and we've had some preliminary discussions with the city on this already. I've got construction drawings back now since our meetings with the city to go ahead and put this extension in. Conchise Drive today ends right here, and then Timber Meadow Drive coming up from Colburn Road ends right here. What we would like to do is go ahead and put this in right away, and then whether or not that gets, the process of when that gets dedicated to the city, that's something that we'll work through with staff, but we would like to go ahead and put that in now so that we can create a secondary front door off of Colburn Road. Now, all of that said, I apologize. I did this PowerPoint this afternoon, and I've got 2013 up there. That's actually 2014. We missed those dates. So, new pool and cabana house, again, shooting for that this summer, the walking trails. Street trees in the first phase, I didn't put an actual date on that. We are prepared to go ahead and put those in. However, in giving more thought to that, I mean, with the construction of housing, I have a little bit of a concern going ahead and putting those in, even if they didn't, the contractors didn't hit them, which is a former realtor. I haven't found a contractor yet that didn't see those real estate signs as a target. It's something that they tried to hit. So, we'll lean to whatever the best wishes of the city are on that, but in giving it a little more thought, I don't know that we don't wait until we're nearing completion of that first phase to go ahead and put that in. I know street tree planting program was something that we had out at Winterset when I was managing Winterset and New Longview, and traditionally we always waited till the last of the phase to put those in. We put a decent sized caliper in, so that way you got a good canopy over within a few years, but that way we didn't lose as many. We talked about the entry, street trees, connection, and mailboxes. Instead of just the gray gang box, it drives me nuts. And if you want to have a look at what I've got in my mind for the mailboxes, Winterset, the exact way that we did it out at Winterset, wrapping those in either a ruble or some sort of a larger stone, not the small stones. Just wrapping those boxes so that the only area that the exposed gray is where they open and close them on the interior side, the non-street side. Looking at Chapman Farms as a whole, I talked about some of the challenges that we've got here. This right now is planned to be, according to PUD, minimum 1,200 square foot villa product. And so we've got the bar and the tattoo shop up here, 2 commercial lots there, and then driving on back, we're going to be having our customers drive past the 1,200 square foot villas. That's where we start getting into our request for a square footage modification, let alone the $500,000 and above market and where it's at, and not a lot of demand for that. But then the transitioning back to there, trying to make sure it's a more congruent transition of product. Additionally, and I will mention this, there's a watershed area right now that kind of cuts across right here at the halfway point of Meadows of Chapman Farms, wraps down here, encompasses us, and then actually comes right across somewhere in this zone on the future Walmart property and back up. All of that water has a detention basin that has been installed. To what degree it was installed, I don't want to get into that, but it was installed, something was installed down here as a future requirement of anybody that turns dirt in a future phase in this watershed. This thing's going to need to be improved. And our estimates range anywhere from about $115,000 to $150,000 to improve that. Our developer is prepared to solely burden that, be solely burdened by that cost when he develops the second phase, which is what we've kind of come to an agreement with staff on. When we turn dirt on this second phase, we'll come down here and do this detention basin. But there again, we want a cash flow on this thing too. And then part of cash flowing is selling. Now you look at areas that would probably be well suited for high dollar homes. Golf courses and lakes. That's traditionally been where it's been. And so what you've seen is tremendous success over here in Lakeside at Chapman Farms, and now they're transitioning over into the shores into a higher price point. And so I think it's worth mentioning that I don't know that the citizens of Blue Springs are losing the higher dollar homes that they're searching for. I think that's taking place between here and then also in Stone Canyon, a golf course, lake. And so we're looking for a slight modification. And what that means is, here's what we're looking at. And as you can see, we've submitted a plethora of 2-story plans. You know, in Winterset, at one point, we had 900, 1,000 residents that had moved in at that point, and we went back and kind of did a historical autopsy on what plans we were selling. And we were shocked as a development team, and I don't know why that we were, that it was close to 80 to 85% of all homes built and constructed in Winterset were 2 stories. We did have a lot of ranch, and this is part of the reason why we were shocked. We had a lot of ranch, more or less reverses, because we had a lot of walkouts, but the bulk of our product was that 2-story. And we feel like that's going to be the same or carry over here in the estates at Chapman Farms. We have submitted a reverse. That's not to say we're not going to have some ranch reverses, but to be frank with you, we don't have a lot of daylight walkout lots, which is the other thing that usually drives the higher dollar homes. You've got the daylight and the walkout lots. If I went back to the map, of what's platted today and even the future stuff, really, this zone in here and then some of these lots here are better, what I would call walkout lots. There's a drainage stream that runs back down through here, and so these lots fall off quite a bit back through here. But the bulk of our stuff is former agricultural, flat farmland. And so we don't have the things that you would typically see as driving a ranch or a reverse plan. I'll also point out, in the packet that was provided to you, which I think I saw it up on the screen, one of the things on that Excel spreadsheet that's in that packet, there's some boxes that were highlighted yellow. If you look at what's previously been approved and what we're requesting, and again, I'm going on record as saying we're willing we're okay with the 1,700 on the ranch and the 2,300 all others. If you look at the comparison between what's being requested and the change, I think there were 3 plans that did not meet the minimum on the main level square footage requirement, But then you looked at the gross, and on 2 of those 3 plans, I think we still exceeded the 2,600 gross, or we were within 50 square feet of that. We were like 2,570 or something like that. But that said, we also had one on there that was a 1.5-story plan that was at 2,370 square feet. So I didn't want to hide from it. I wanted to point it out. Here's the plans. Here's what we're shooting for. But that said, now if you look at this, this is that same Excel spreadsheet that I had submitted to staff. And over to the right, we're going to average $40,000 a lot, maybe a little bit more than that. We may be up 42, 43, somewhere in there on our lot price to our builder. With those lot prices, we're still coming in mostly over 300. There's only one plan up there that isn't. And looking back through all the previous approvals that were done on this site from beginning to, just prior to us getting here, in all of those comments, it said homes 300,000 and above. Every single one of them. And that's what we're still shooting for. Will we have a few that may be under the 300? If they built a based out Redbud plan with no upgrades, yeah, they might be able to get in there slightly under 283, the 300 mark, not on our others, but on that one. But in general, and I did this in Longview, after we had built 100 houses, I went back and demographically profiled all of our buyers, and at this price point, almost all of it, well, the average was a 12% increase from base price to contract price of what they actually signed their contract for. And then from that point to actual closing, with the additional upgrades they added, there was about another 3%. So about a 15 to 18% increase between base price to ultimate closing price. So I think, again, as far as the intent for this area in South Blue Springs, given what's going on in the Shores and Stone Canyon and what we're asking for here and some of the challenges, I think we're still meeting the intent of what the residents of Blue Springs would have expected. Or I'm hopeful that you'll agree. And then from here, I know it's late and you guys are going to want to ask some questions. I provided kind of a side-by-side of the front elevations of the houses we submitted. So here's the Augusta, and then up in the National, up north, the golf course community, here's that Augusta plan. Redbud. Now I do want to speak to this. On some of these front elevations, and I apologize, we didn't have time to get renderings together specific for this community, so I was grabbing renderings from our builder off of websites for other communities. One of the changes, which I've discussed with Jim, that we're going to be making to the CC&Rs, and I don't care if we memorialize this in writing either, is for front elevations, we want stone, stucco, brick, or a combination thereof, or a heavier architectural material up above. And when I come to the what I'm thinking is like a staggered shake shingle, painted a darker color, or a complementary color, or there's some front elevations that a builder did for us when I was working for Union Bank down in Hickory Hills that had a cedar. It wasn't lap because it was a rough cut, sawn cut cedar at the gable ends, and then he stained that along with the columns coming up from the stone base, cedar columns coming up, stained to match the gable end. Looked phenomenal. I mean, these houses looked expensive, and they were, and it worked. And he sold those very, very well. And so I'm not a fan of lap siding on front elevations, and so one of the changes we'll be making to the CC&Rs, and I've talked to our builder and he's agreeable with this, is no lap siding on the front elevations of the houses. Now we would still be looking at the smart panels on the sides and rear, looking specifically at the front elevations. There's the Redbud, and see there, it looks like he's got lap siding because the photo is a dark day. That's actually staggered shake shingles. If I would have done something a little different here, maybe painted those an accent color so it would pop a little bit more from the rest of the body color. Augusta with the den, and you can see these are still fairly large houses. The Ashcliff, again up in the National, and then the Riviera. Let me make sure that I'm not missing anything else. I did have a few questions for staff regarding the requirements. On the sidewalks on both sides of Brookside Drive, is that the areas that we own, that requirement?
Yeah, I'm sure that is the
Okay.
areas that you own.
I figured, but I've learned to ask. And then, the item 8 and 9, we don't actually own those areas on item 9. Is that something that the city, I don't know what we do there. I mean, I'd be happy to reach out to Mr. Flanders up on the corner. I believe Commerce Bank owns the other one, which could be a miracle reaching somebody there. But we agree, I mean, as it is today, the Commerce Bank site, which is at the north west corner, it's grown up and the sight line is horrible. So I agree with you, it's that we need to figure out something there, but we don't actually own that.
I'm sorry, Kevin, which condition was this?
Right now, I'm talking specific to item 9.
Condition number 9 that says provide site distance easements at the intersection of Brookside and 7 Highway.
Yeah.
As required by MoDOT, and these easements need to be recorded with the county prior to the city council approval. I'll have to defer to Ben on that one, because I'm really not sure.
I don't, if you don't own the property, I don't know how you could.
Yeah, I don't
meet
either.
that requirement, so.
I mean, we're happy to reach out to Mr. Flanders and try to, and I think he would be happy. When I called him and I was talking to him about what we were planning on, I mean, he's in a hold and wait period. He doesn't, he's not interested in selling. He's waiting for stuff to build up so that it makes his more attractive. And then they ultimately want to build themselves and then lease to somebody there. So if it's an improvement to, if it benefits him, I don't think we'll have a problem with him. Commerce Bank, I'm happy to do the background legwork and trying to find somebody, but that one might be a little interesting.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
So I would ask that on item 5, could we just clarify on that in the approval minutes just for the areas within this development, and then number 9, if we could remove that. And then on Jim, items 8 and 11, and it's my fault for making the assumption, but I had assumed that when the final plat was recorded and the certificate of substantial completion issued previously, that the bonds were already placed on those.
And I would agree that is correct, so we should strike those as well.
Okay, perfect.
So we
Other than that.
Strike both 8 and 11?
Yes. Wait a minute, let me read 8 real quick.
On 8, we still need, no, that's been done.
Yes.
Yeah, 8 would strike too, I believe. And I don't think there's any other conditions. I mean, we agree, and they would only help us in our marketing, so. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I believe they were talking when we said 8, 9, and 11.
That's what I believe, that's what I believe I heard as well. 8, 9, and 11 would be okay to strike those?
Correct, thank you.
Thank you.
Clarification on 5, is that correct?
And he asked for a clarification on 5 to make that owned property only.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions for this applicant as we go forward? I guess not.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
I have Bill McCoy here, who is our realtor that's going to be listing the property, to speak to market conditions if you would like. If it's not necessary, that's fine too.
I did have a question.
Yes, sir.
Well, you compare this to Winterset, so what's the size that homes in Winterset compared to?
That's a great question. We had a wide variety of houses, and one of the examples I pointed out this last week, Dave Gale, the owner of our company, who at one time was not hurting for money, He built his own personal house there in Winterset on a cul-de-sac, so it wasn't like you could hide from it or get away from it. It was approximately a $1.2 million house, and just a few houses down from him, he had a $350,000 house neighbor. But the way...
So what's the average price in Winterset?
It depends on the area.
Square footage, you're saying?
Yeah, it depends on the area. We probably were anywhere from 2,400 up to 5,000 square feet. It just depended on the area of Winterset. For instance, when we got into Winterset Valley and we were developing back to the west, and we were approaching, there's View High Drive, and there was our old office, which is that house that sat up on the hill on the corner, and then there was that vacant ground. Well, that vacant ground eventually was going to be some sort of a multifamily use, and so what we did was provided, number one, a buffer area, and then number two, we went to the 300, 275 to, maybe 350 houses in that zone as a transitioning element. Likewise, trying to think, we got over into Winterset Phase 14, which back to Longview Road, which was a fairly trafficked road. Had to do substantial screening, and those were our smaller houses in the 3 to 400 range. So it just depends on what the location was.
Right.
Now, that said, one of the tricks that we learned along the way was, like I mentioned, the example with Dave's personal house, and then having less expensive product around it. One of the tricks we learned was you can mask the size of a house by how you treat it on the outside architecturally. And so when you look through some of these elevations, for instance here, by carrying that covered element, which is, when you look at craftsman architecture, it's more about horizontal lines than it is the vertical. And so you've got the wainscot carrying across here, but you put this here, and then you put the gable ends here, and your house starts taking a little bit larger. Imagine this if it would have all hip roofs. To me, hip roofs usually read smaller. So I'm a bigger fan when you're trying to promote the larger look of the gable ends and the gable looks. But then additionally, colors. You see how he offset the color here compared to here and here? That's one of the tricks that we use. And then see how he's put a plant here? Now, although that's not the plant that I would have chosen, I would have probably chosen an upright juniper for that location. I'm not a big fan of concrete. And so that upright juniper between that and this landscape planting bed over here, what it tends to do is it distracts the eye from the concrete. That upright juniper pulls the eye up, and then you start concentrating on the architectural elements. So I think with the elevations that we're talking about, and if you thumb through, because this is the first thing I did was when we got the old elevations from staff, and then I got the new elevations from our builder, I laid them all out on the table. It's like, all right, matches up, matches up, matches up. There's one elevation that Signature had previously submitted that we don't match up with, and it was a behemoth. I mean, it was wide, and then it came around, and it had the angular entry garage, and I think it had the full angular 3-car garage, so that thing was a huge house. We don't match up to that, and I won't hide from that. But I think the rest of them, we match up relatively well as far as the elevations go. And again, if you look at my chart on the square footages, we're pretty close on most of the square footages. I have 2 plans out of those 8 that I showed you that were below what the previous requirement were. What we're asking for is some flexibility, knowing that and this is what you've seen over in Lakeside and now over in the shores too. If their baseline's set here, what generally happens is that's where your base house is before the 12 to 15 to 18% optional upgrades that we get into, or finished basements. And so what you've seen even over in Lakeside and the shores is that price range, the buyer has driven that price range up organically versus trying to force something. Nothing hurts a community worse than building product and having it sit and become stale. Then you got a bigger problem. But if we can build it organically, that price range will work its way up. The meat and bones of what we're shooting for is in that 300 to 400 range. Knowing full well that we'll have some buyers that'll take us up into the 400s. The meat and bones of what we're shooting for is 300 to 400. And with our base prices that I just showed, I think we're on par with that.
Well, like I say, I just want to make a statement. I've been the planning commissioner here for quite a few years, and Chapman Farms to me has been kind of a disappointment because of what we originally told us we were going to have there, and every time we have a development, it comes back to exactly the same thing. I understand you guys have some interesting challenges over there, but,
yeah.
you know, I always thought, like you mentioned Winterset, I thought that was a great development community. I'd like to see more like that come into Blue Springs, but, and like I say, I understand the economics have changed a little bit, but it seems like everyone, it's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what we asked for, but we can't do it, so. Just a comment.
A personal observation, as a lifelong resident of Blue Springs, one of the things that I've, in most of my professional career, has been in the Lee Summit area, and working with Gale Communities and as a realtor, but then since then managing properties for banks. One of the disappointments that I had seen in Blue Springs was and I understand why they did it, but a developer has a new phase that opens up. He's got 30 lots in it, and the first thing, during the good times, the first thing we did was we held a raffle, or whatever you want to call it, set down your 8 builders, and they all pick out their lots, and all 30 lots are gone that night, and then each builder brings their own realtor in, and consequently, you don't have a concentrated marketing effort on the community. And I was one of those realtors that benefited from getting to list some of those one-off houses. But I was marketing that house in a full-page ad with 20 other houses, and so it kind of got lost. What I've liked and what I've seen that's a good trend in South Blue Springs is the concept of the one realtor for the community. Because they do spend money on that community, and they do tend to market it, and they do staff it, full-time. And that drove me nuts was when the market started to change, my realtors on site that worked for us wanted to stop working the sales office as much. I needed it more now than before. I understand the reality of it, and I actually ended up agreeing with them. Yeah, you can't make a living doing just this, but that's the trend that I've liked, that I've seen going on in Blue Springs, is more of moving to the one community realtor marketing firm, because I think you get better exposure, you get better control of the message that's coming out to the public, and I see that as a positive. I believe, as a side note, that the villas that are to the east of us now are owned by the city of Blue Springs, I believe. So that may help us in our efforts moving forward.
Mr. Phillips, I do have to kind of go along with Mr. Abbott. I think your question was not so much why, the marketing of it, and why we have to keep reducing from 1,800 to 16. I know that, believe me.
Oh, I don't have my mic. I know your background. I know you know it.
And I understand that we keep reducing because, and I know the changes of times and everything, but I think that was your point, not so much that the one person marketing is that why do we have to keep reducing, and every time we turn around, we get an audience with, it abuts other properties, and now we're reducing again.
Yeah.
And so who are you trying to market to? Are you changing who you're marketing to versus who you were marketing? Because 200 square feet. Or is it price point?
If it had been, if that had been my project to begin with, let's say that the whole South Blue Springs project, Chapman, that is not the area I would have targeted for the estate-size homes. It would have been around that lake, the shores. Because like I said, golf courses, lakes, that's traditionally where you see them get that price. And this was put over by a water tower with some of the things that we have to drive by. I think it was an ill-fated design to begin with, and driving past those villa products. You've got a better transition between Lakeside and Greenbrier going to the shores of those expensive homes than you do transitioning from what we have on 7 Highway villas to these lots with a water tower. Now, that said, we're going to put a playground back there at the water tower and try to make lemons out of lemonade with that thing. And thankfully, the water district has just redone, they repainted it, so it's a nice new shiny blue, which is, we'll make the best of it. That would be my answer, is I think it was an ill-fated design. I would not have designed it that way.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We will bring it back up here for discussion. Motions. I would make sure with staff, are you okay with those 3 deletions on the?
Yes, and the modification.
And the modification?
Yes, yes, we are.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Graham.
I would move to approve, what would it be? The amended final plat for the estates at Chapman Farms, case number PF-10-13-4128. With, how do you want me to say this? With staff recommendations excluding 8, 9, and 11, and then modifying condition 5 to include property owned by the applicant only.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That final plat will go to the city council for approval with our recommendation. Thank you. I look forward to seeing something go up out of the ground up there. And we move on now to, finally, other business. Mr. Hawley, do you have anything you would like to comment on this evening?
No, only to note that the next planning commission meeting is November 7th, and Karen, if I'm not mistaken, one item right now?
Yes.
That we have on that agenda?
One item.
Okay. Other than that, I have nothing else.
I'm sorry?
November 11th, is it?
November 7th or
7th.
11th? No, 11th. 1-1.
I'm sorry, it is November the 11th, yes. 1-1.
Okay, I've been asked to, a couple of things here. Remind everyone, the Public Safety Advisory Board meeting, which is Tuesday, November 12th at 6 o'clock in this room. There will be a presentation on the new public safety building, the renovation and addition to this building that we're in. This will be a good time to get to see what they're going to do, because it is something that, other than going to the Downtown Review Board, will not come before us as an item. So this is a chance for us to look at it and see what they're going to do.
What date and time?
Tuesday, November 12th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Also would like to remind everybody, and everybody, if anybody's still watching us at home, that on Saturday, November 9th, there is a fundraiser for Shop with the Blue Springs Cop at Moreland Ridge Middle School from 5 to 8 p.m. That will be dinner provided by Rancho Grande Cantina and an auction. The tickets are $5 in advance, $6 at the door. I have a phone number here if anybody wants to get tickets in advance, 935-6770. Anyone else like to make any comments and/or announcements? Thank you all for sitting along with us. This is the longest meeting we've had in quite a while. I enjoyed it. And that being said, I would entertain a motion to go home.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.